Hello, good morning, and welcome to CosmoQuest Community Coffee for today, December 14th, in the year that I still shall not name. This is Community Coffee, and I am your host, Gillian Rhodes, and it is a Monday, which means it is time for astronomy and art and all the wonderful ways that they fuse and fission and influence each other. You are all very lucky because I have a guest today, and it is not just me talking to you into the void. Today, I am joined by a wonderful artist that I found through the SETI Institute Facebook group, the Art Imaginarium, which you've heard me talk about a lot on this stream. But I thought I have seen her work across multiple challenges. I really enjoyed getting to know it more when I was preparing for this show. She's based in Denmark, and she's a digital artist, makes these incredible collages. And I'm just really happy to have her here. So welcome, Pia. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So just to kind of kick things off, if you could give us just a brief intro onto you and your work.
I work mainly in digital format. I use Photoshop, and I use different apps on my tablet and on my phone. And I used to work on paper and on canvas, but I've changed entirely, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, really going from paper to digital art. So these days, do you create almost entirely digitally?
Actually, it's like 99%
Okay.
digital work. Yeah.
Yeah. And is most of your work collages? So how do you I've kind of skipped around, but I was thinking about this, that especially because what I've seen a lot from you are the collages, so
Yeah.
how do you kind of put those together? Do you take images from places, or do you create the images separately, or how does that work?
It's a bit of everything, really. I take a lot of photographs with my phone when I go for walks and whatever I'm doing. And sometimes I use these photographs as a base. Um, I often warp the photography in Photoshop or in the apps I use, and make them different, change the color, change the texture, the structure. I often completely morph them into something else.
Right.
And I usually use my own pictures, but I also use Creative Commons pictures. Uh, if I want a landscape like mountains, I don't have any mountains nearby, so I use that. I also use a lot of pictures from space, of course, and it's the same procedure. I usually morph them into something completely different.
Right.
Also,
Yeah.
as sometimes I use them as is, but usually I change them, and it's like I puzzle them together with all kinds of other stuff that I find the same way. Yeah.
Right.
So it's a
Yeah.
mix. Yeah.
A mix of it's literally a digital collage. It's a mix of
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
digital
Yeah.
images.
And
Yeah.
then along the way, when I puzzle the picture together, I start painting in Photoshop. Photoshop is my main medium. I paint shadows. I paint, all kinds of little details that I can't find photographs of. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so
So
speaking of,
that's the way I make them.
okay, great. And so speaking of the space images, right? So a lot of most of your work is featuring astronomical images of some sort. So
Mm.
kind of, was that something that came into your work later, or was it there from the start?
It was there from the start. I've been drawing and painting since I was a kid, and my interest in space started also when I was a kid. My dad was, this was back in the 70s, so it's a long time since. The Apollo missions were still going on, and he was very into the whole Apollo thing, and told me about the men on the moon, and he had a lot of books with these lovely pictures of space and of rockets and all kinds of astronomy stuff. And I used to just go through them. And when I was older and could read myself, I read them. And the interest in space have always been connected to my painting and drawing. It's just so much easier now when I can use photography as a base and then take it from there.
Right, yeah. When you have the astrophotography that's available to you to use, basically.
Yeah, it's very inspiring. Yeah.
Definitely. And so those, I actually wanted to just kind of get right into the work, because I was looking on your website, and I'll put a link in the chat as well to the website so people can see. But you have a couple of different kind of collections, the Spacescapes and the Space Urbex, two series. So if you could tell me a little bit about those two series and kind of, the different inspirations behind them.
Sure. The Spacescape started out as I was trying to imagine about exoplanets, because I'm also joining citizen science, and we're looking for exoplanets. And that kind of got me into the idea of wondering how it looks on an exoplanet. So I started imagining how it might be. And I kind of, well, it took off a bit, because a lot of my work is rather surreal. So it took off a bit, but that was where it started. And I tried to, imagine foreign places. So that is the Spacescapes, what they're about. And Space Urbex is even more surreal.
Yeah.
And I really like urbex photography. People taking pictures of old cities, old buildings all over the world that has been abandoned for some reason. And I really find it really interesting. There's so many stories, and you can almost imagine the people that used to live there. And when I look at pictures of urbex, I get this kind of lonely feeling, and actually it's the same feeling that I imagine I would have if I was in space. I think space is a really lonely place. There's such huge distance between everything, so I'm guessing it's pretty lonely. If you are like a little photon traveling through space, you must be lonely. So I kind of went with that lonely feeling I get from watching urbex photography, and kind of put it into space, and then gave it a surreal twist. Yeah. So that's the inspiration for those.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just looking through some of the pictures that you sent me, and I think like the bus stop one, for example, it kind of has that kind of feeling behind that of the lonely traveler kind of. Um,
Yeah. I'm glad
yeah.
you think so. That was what I was trying to get through. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, as you're making these collections, have you had the opportunity to exhibit them, in Denmark or elsewhere?
Actually, not in Denmark, no. But this September, I had two pictures in an online exhibition, and that
Okay.
was actually my first curated exhibition. And that was the Art of Planetary Science at the University of Arizona, and I
Okay.
had two pictures in it. A bit lucky because usually they are having their exhibit in in real life, but because of all this Corona thing, they had it online this year. So that meant that a lot of artists from around the world could join. Usually, I'm guessing it's only a few people that actually can go to Arizona and be in it. But I was lucky to have two pictures there, and that's my only curated exhibit so far. I
Right.
have had a few pictures in Danish exhibits, but it's been open exhibits. It's a
Okay.
bit different.
Yeah. But also, in addition to your painting, you also, I think, do music and poetry as well.
Yeah, yeah, I do. I'm a published writer of poetry and short stories in Denmark. Yeah, I do write a little bit English poetry, but it's my second language, so it's not that much.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. No,
yeah,
poetry is very hard in a second language. I know.
yeah, yeah.
Very, very
Also
difficult.
in your first language, actually. So
Yes, that's
yeah,
very true. That's very true.
yeah.
And does your astronomy interest touch on the poetry and music, or does it mostly in your visual work?
It does influence my poetry quite a lot. My musical work. Yeah, I like spacey sounds, but I haven't really used it as inspiration for my music. Not really, no. But in my poetry, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I did one of the episodes of the show. I went through astro poetry, and I found all kinds of really interesting stuff. But of course, it was in English. I did find a website that was half in French, but because the language of this show is English, I didn't look too much at it. But I'll have to go back sometime because I can read French at least. But
Oh, okay.
poetry
Well,
and
poetry sounds lovely in French. I don't understand French, but it sounds lovely.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I guess.
very poetic language. Mm.
Until you understand what they're saying, and then you're just like, that's
Maybe
not
there's
poetry at
some crack.
all. But never mind. So there's another series that I wanted to talk to you about. So I found it on your website, and when I first saw it, it's the geometrics that you
Oh,
do.
yeah.
And when I first saw it, I thought that they were fractals, but I think you said they're not fractals. But I'd love to hear about the process behind that.
Yeah. Well, I always use Photoshop for these ones, um, and I start by drawing like a line or something like that, and then I build from that. If I want to make a square, I take just one line at a time and then build up from there. And I use one layer for, I don't know if you know Photoshop, but it's about drawing in layers.
Right.
And I use one layer for each stroke
Oh,
actually.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it takes like sometimes like 400 layers or something. But of course I merge them along the way so it doesn't become completely uh, far out. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it would
and
be quite unmanageable at a certain point.
yeah, yeah. But it's actually it's a fun thing to do because it's repetition. You copy and you have a lot of repetition. So actually, it's kind of a little bit like meditation. Actually, when I do the very intricate pattern, because I do the same procedure again and again and again. You know, I duplicate a layer and add one more and so on. So it's built up like a Lego, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's actually kind of meditative to make those. So
Yeah.
I'm fond of making those. Yeah.
I'm trying to let me see. I just they're they're on your website. I don't think you sent me any of them, but there's I'm just gonna send the link to a couple and put them in the chat. It's under the drawings. Here we are. They're really quite intricate, actually, at a certain and just to imagine that, how they've been put together line by line is pretty incredible. I'm just kind of glancing through them, and so even if they're like, some of them look like they have curved lines. So do you also kind of with the curved lines, is that the same process where it's just layer
Yeah.
by layer by layer?
No, it's the same procedure. Yes, it's curved lines. It really, yeah, it's the same thing.
All right, I'm just dumping some links into the chat. So you guys can see what I'm talking about, because they're really quite interesting. Um, cool. And so, what are you working on right now, and what are you kind of looking forward to in the coming months?
Well, I never plan anything, so
That's great. I mean,
yeah,
it must be so perfect for this year.
yeah, yeah, pretty much, pretty much. Yeah, I don't plan anything. I just go where the inspiration takes me, and I never know where it takes me. Um, I don't have any specific plans. I do really enjoy the Art Imaginarium on Facebook, because they have these challenges, and sometimes it's stuff that I would never dream of becoming inspired by. So that's pretty awesome, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna continue following those. But
What has
otherwise, I
been
don't.
your,
Sorry.
oh, I was going to say, what has been your favorite challenge so far from that group?
Um, I think maybe the challenge that was what we imagine first contact would be. I think that was back in September or August this year.
I think it
That
was,
was pretty fun.
yeah, September maybe,
Yeah. Um,
August.
so, but also October, that was constellations. I'm usually not interested in constellations except for finding stuff in the sky. I'm not into Greek mythology or anything. So
Right.
I would never have thought of that as inspiration for art. But it was fun. Being from the north, I digged in a little bit to Norse mythology and found an interesting constellation. So that was fun, and I learned a lot. And I didn't even know that that could be exciting, but it was. Yeah. So yeah,
That's, that's
I've
great.
been taken places you don't usually would go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, when you kind of get the inspiration for something, or when you start to work on something, what's kind of the first thing that you start with, or that you do? Is it like the image, or is it the overall concept? Like, how do you kind of start to piece a new work together?
It's different from time to time. Sometimes maybe I've taken a picture of a beautiful sky, or something interesting, and I start to wonder, what can I use this thing for? And then I just go step by step from there. But other times I have like a clear picture in my mind about where I want to go from the start, and then I start collecting things that might take me there. So it's different from each time, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just decide I want to make with the challenge about what first contact could be. I wanted to make a Dyson sphere, and I then started gathering stuff I could use for this. So I had the clear vision in my head before I started, but just as often it's the other way around. I just, oh, this looks interesting. What can I use that for? And then I put it in a picture and think, okay, what could work well with this? And I try things.
Yeah.
And it usually takes a lot of tries before I find something that I can put together.
Right. That's what I was going to ask next is actually how long does it take you to put together one of these collages?
Hmm. Usually it takes, well, about a week or so.
Okay.
But sometimes I'm really inspired and it takes like 2 days. And other times it sits for months and I can't really get it done.
Right.
So I put it aside, work on something different, and then take it back up again when I find something that I could use maybe. But I'll say usually about a week. Yeah.
Okay. Um, okay. Yeah. So the last thing I'm actually just looking through the pictures that you sent me again. Um, the kind of as the last. Um, I'd be interested to know kind of some of the images and ideas that went into the one that you sent me called Red Deer, which is it's a little bit apocalyptic, and you've got like, I don't know, something happening in the sky, lightning in this. Is that one of your spacescapes?
It is, yes. It's one of
Okay.
my spacescapes. Actually, that particular piece was inspired by the painting that is, I don't know if it's a thing in the United States, but in Europe we have this painting with a deer at a forest lake. It's kind of it's a thing, people have it on their walls in all kinds of different um, ways. It's not the same picture, but it's the same motif. So it's
Okay.
always the deer and the forest and the lake. And it's a classical theme, really, in our parts anyway. And I wanted to make it a bit, because all of the forests on Earth are disappearing rapidly. And I thought, how can I make this deer picture in that context, um, and using my spacescape too. So I was trying to do that with that picture. So I used the red deer, and I used the rather spiky ground and a very dramatic sky and a few really sad looking trees. And
Right.
yeah, so I tried to convey a form of yeah, you could say doomsday. Um, and that is the complete opposite to the very idyllic there at the Forest Lake pictures you see from, well, it's probably from the 1800s, the original one. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was the idea behind that. And that was a concept from the start, where I had the idea and then tried to find stuff to put it together.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So guys, if you have any questions for Pia, put them in the chat so that we can ask. But in the meantime, I literally had a question and then I said that thing about the chat and then it went away. Let me just try and track it down and get it back. Yes, which is, are you working on anything right now? Do you have anything in process?
Yeah, well, I always have like 4 or 5 pictures
Oh, wow.
that is going on. It's not like I completely work on one picture at a time. I usually have like a few going at the same time. So I can work a little bit on one thing and a little bit on the other thing.
Okay.
So yeah, I have stuff in production. Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking that at least 2 of those are long time projects that I won't finish anytime soon. But one of the things I'm working on, I will definitely finish in the next few days. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's true, that as artists we often have those, the things that we know we can finish and the things that you're
Yeah.
just like, I just kind of work on this when I can.
Exactly, exactly.
It's not a question, but Carolyn B is saying in the chat that she really likes your poem about bridges making connections.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, I saw a few of the poems. They're quite short, but they're very they kind of they pop.
Yeah, that's probably the haiku, I think. The 3-line poetry.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Cool. Well, if there are no other questions or comments from the chat, Pia, it's just been lovely to chat with you. And like I said, I love your work. I think it's just really, it's just very striking and it's really fun to look at. So I do recommend everybody to take a look at Pia's website and her work. And you have a YouTube channel as well, I believe.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And an Instagram. Yeah.
I put the Instagram in the chat. Let me just link to your YouTube as well. And yeah, so thank you for joining me on this lovely
Thank
Monday.
you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And so to the rest of you, I just remind you that we have a week full of content coming up. From Thursday to Friday is the Daily Space, which is your daily science news roundup. We have simulcast with Astronomy Cast, Weekly Space Hangout, Open Space. I believe today is Minecraft Monday, which will be in a couple hours from now. And don't forget that the way the CosmoQuest world goes around is by donations from wonderful people like you. You can check the links in the chat to see how you can keep this world going around. Thank you for joining, and I will be back next Monday with an extra special winter solstice Jupiter-Saturn conjunction performance. So don't miss that. And we'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.